Oh, yeah, we are back at the NFL Report, James Palmer, and we are now joined by John Beck, who's a private quarterback coach with 3D QB, their company, and this might be the busiest man in America right now, especially with these days. He trained several quarterbacks at the Combine. He works with a lot of guys already in the league. John, thanks so much for joining us here at the NFL Report. And speaking of the Combine, okay, you've got Michael Penix, you've got J.J. McCarthy. Would love just to kind of get your immediate review of how they performed this weekend.
Well, I thought they had good throwing sessions. I think that's kind of the main thing when you're a quarterback and you're there is you just want to let people, the coaches, see you now. For some of them, it's the first time live. You know, I know scouts and general managers and assistant GMs have seen these guys play throughout the season during their college games. But this is really the first time for an NFL coach to be field level with those guys. And so to be able to, Mike felt good about his performance. So did JJ. I mean, there's always going to be those couple throws where they're throwing to guys they've never thrown to. Maybe the route's a little different than what they anticipated, and it's not quite what they hoped it would have been. But I tell the guys, look, it's not about being perfect. It's about going out there, showing these teams who you are and giving them a chance to see you live. And I think both guys did a pretty good job of that.
John, I'm looking, talking to guys around the league. They really liked Michael's performance in this combine setting and the throwing session. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone with the way that he throws the football. I kind of want to look back to years past. Is there anybody that threw at the combine that you've worked with or that really dramatically helped themselves after everybody got a chance to see them throw up close? Because when these quarterback coaches and guys can stand right behind you, did that change or improve anybody's perception that you've worked with in years past?
Well, I think I'm just going to use last year's combine. C.J. Stroud decided to throw last year, and he probably didn't need to throw, but he decided to do it. And I just remember afterwards the number of text messages I got because guys were just like, wow, I mean, I saw good stuff on tape, but that was awesome. And I remember C.J. feeling great about his performance. He was happy that he did it. I mean, and that to me was – coaches loved that he went out there and threw. CJ nailed it, had a great performance. And so it's not like it really improved his stock. I mean, you kind of knew that him and Bryce were the top two guys. But I think for a lot of teams, they said, wow, that ball really just jumps off his hand and spins so clean. And, so yes, it was a definite, teams really, I think, whether you can say, answered questions or got a great first look that really said, man, this guy's talented. That's the first thing that popped in my head. Yep, it's CJ right there. Did a great job.
So look, we talked about Michael Penix and J.J. McCarthy, but you also trained the Heisman Trophy winner, Jayden Daniels. And stylistically, these are three very different types of players. Like, how do you go about training them and prepping them knowing that they've got different skill sets and to amplify those strengths?
Well, I think I wouldn't be able to answer that question without talking about our team of coaches here. Taylor Kelly and Adam Dado spent a lot of time with these guys as well. And really, it's a team effort from all of us. Taylor Kelly's one that spends a ton of time with Jayden throughout the last couple seasons. And so the amount of work that they put in, yes, each guy's different. And we can't train every guy alike. And the things that we can recognize that their body's capable of or that they can do, we really try to capitalize on those things. And speaking of Jayden, he's such a unique individual. And I've really watched him progress over the last 20 months as a thrower. And he's so flicky with the ball right now. And his accuracy as he progresses through throws has really gone up. And I mean, you just saw it on display all throughout the season. And when you have somebody that's that capable in the throwing game now, and then he has the athleticism to go with it, it's why he had such a remarkable year. But I look at those statistics that you guys threw up right there. 40 touchdowns to 4 interceptions with a 72% percentage in the SEC. You can't do that unless you are a premier thrower. And really, that's where Jayden advanced in his game as a thrower, and it was awesome to see it on display during the 23 season.
John, when you look at Jayden, and we're looking at his size right there too, that's one of the very few questions about his game I hear when I ask around the league. Is this one of those things, you've been around so many quarterbacks, worked with them, seen them grow from their college maybe body to what their NFL body can become? Is he one of those guys that can put on, 10, 15 pounds in the first maybe 2 years? And how do you kind of gauge that or maybe make sure teams can understand that about his body type?
Yeah, that is a question that, people do ask. I think when you see his frame is going to be easy to add weight to it. I think that sometimes those guys that are the leaner guys just kind of genetically, but they have that elite, speed and that kind of like shiftiness. Like, you don't want that guy being the 220 guy. You're not going to say, hey, well, we really need you to sit back in the pocket and be able to take those hits. Like, he's probably always going to be a little bit on that leaner side because of his game. But his frame is definitely capable of putting some weight on. And I think that kind of happens naturally. I've seen with guys, they have kind of that like fresh out of college body. It's really only a few years removed from that freshman high, hey, I graduated from high school. I got that 88 to 195 pound freshman body. Well, that all of a sudden just continues to progress. And now all of a sudden they get in their mid 20s. They start getting 26, 27 years old. And now that 5, 10 extra pounds, it's just there because the body's maturing. But, when you stand side by side with Jayden, or you put him next to people that are 210, 215, you see from a frame standpoint, that's going to be easy for him to add on as the years go. And as long as he can maintain his athleticism and speed while adding those pounds, then great.
Yeah, John, that grown man strength is what they, of course, they like to call it. Just that natural maturity. I got a question for you about J.J. McCarthy because we talked about it on the show. Like an incredibly talented player, a super high recruit, but he wasn't asked necessarily to always win ball games with his arm, right? It's the leadership, those intangible types of things. What about a player like him who maybe when he goes to the NFL, he can show off a skill set or a talent that wasn't actually asked to be, enunciated the way it is with some of these other quarterbacks?
Yeah, well, this is a conversation we've had as we prepare him for what teams are going to ask and what evaluators are going to be saying. And to him, when you talk to him, he says, in practice, we were always preparing ourselves to win games that way if we needed to. We were always spending time on 2-minute preparation. We were always spending time on red zone reps, throwing the football. Like, all of those things were things that they practiced a lot. So, it just was given the situation that his team was usually winning in games. He wasn't asked to have to go out there and win the game in the fourth quarter, except for one. And he did it, right, against Alabama in the Rose Bowl, and he did it. But when you talk to him about preparation for those situations, he feels very prepared because of the work that they put in, knowing we are going to be a national championship football team. Somewhere along that road, we're going to have to win the game that way. And so he has a lot of reps in practice. It's just his team didn't have to do it a lot in games.
That's great information, man.
I get that. And kind of grouping these three guys together, you look at the number of starts that they had, John, at the collegiate level. You had a lot of starts at the collegiate level. What are you learning about these quarterbacks that come to you in this process and they're getting ready for the league, but they've played a lot of college football now? The name that everybody in the NFL keeps talking about is maybe that was an advantage for Brock Purdy, right? The number of games that he played at the collegiate level. What maybe about their games with all of these snaps that these three guys you're working with right now have played that gives you maybe, is it a different starting point? Is it a different conversation you have with them during this process?
Well, I think you nailed it. As you were posing that question, the first name that popped into my head was Brock Purdy, because I do think experience matters. I think the amount of games you've played in college, and not only the number of games, but the experiences that you've had in those games. What have you been asked to do? What has your team needed from you? I mean, when I was young in the league, Bill Parcells had the, these are my things that a quarterback has to have done in college or I will not consider taking him. And some of those were tied back to experience. So as I look at these guys, yes, I do think the timetable can be different. Right now in the NFL, when you select a guy high, it's very difficult to hold off from playing him, especially if the team's not winning ball games early. So, hey, you may have a plan to take a guy and say, hey, we're going to let this guy sit a little bit. We're going to let this guy develop. But you don't always get that opportunity because of the situation that your team is in. And so guys can be forced to play earlier than they probably should. And I think when you look at all of these quarterbacks, that's something you got to take into consideration. Okay, we love this guy. We're intrigued by him. We think he's talented. We want to take this guy. When might we have to play him? Do we have the luxury of giving him some time to develop? Or is he going to be one of those guys where if we don't start off great at the beginning of the season with another quarterback, there's going to be that pressure for us to put our first-round quarterback out on the field. And now, depending on the experiences that he's had, depending on the situations he's played in games, even offenses. Two of those guys have had to switch offenses when they switched universities.
Right.
And it's no knock on JJ, but he got to play in one offense the entire time, and it benefited him. And that's one of the reasons why those guys got to be so successful. And so it's just tough because you don't know the situation they're going to land in. You don't know the timetable of when they got to be a starter, but experience always, always helps when you are thrust into the scene.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because I do think the evaluation, because of Brock Purdy, the NFL evaluation on these quarterbacks might be a little different. Hey, Michael Penix played 5 years, right? So we can put him in because he's played in big games. He's seen circumstances someone who's only played, 18 or 19 games hasn't. But I want to get to your other point of playing a guy early, and that's you worked with C.J. Stroud. And we saw how he came in and had arguably the greatest rookie quarterback season of anybody. Knowing him and working with him, how does he take it to the next level?
Oh, man. Well, first off, anytime you have that type of success early, now there comes an expectation.
Right.
And I think, one of the cool things about CJ's stories last year was who expected the Houston Texans with, a rookie quarterback to do what they did. And so there wasn't really an expectation. These guys probably at times got to feel like they're playing a little bit with house money. Now, that doesn't take away from the pressure. Every NFL team feels pressure on Sundays, especially a team that had an opportunity to make a playoff run, right? To get into the playoffs, to win the division and all of that. So they understand pressure. Now the pressure is going to be a little bit different, right? Because now there's a bit of an expectation, And so to CJ, my guess is, and there's probably a reason why he's already started his offseason work, is because he's saying, I like that expectation. I like that. As a competitive guy, the way that he's built, he's saying, fine, this is what I always wanted it to be. So now I'm going to just try to advance in every way I possibly can. And it's actually going to go back to that word of experience. Now here's a young man that has an entire rookie year under his belt. That is just going to do nothing but help him. He gets to keep the same offense, same coordinator, same crew of guys around him. It's going to be great to see his progression over this offseason into the next season.
I'm going to stay in the state of Texas because you also work with Dak Prescott. You've done it several off seasons, and I love an added aspect of his game that maybe we saw in years past, John, but was kind of gone for a sense, was him creating and playing outside the pocket. When I talked to people in Dallas, they were so excited to have that back. They said maybe it was the fear of the injury. They're not entirely sure. But that added back into his game. What did you like about Dak's year that he had? And maybe were there any conversations you guys had heading into last year that you maybe wanted to add that aspect or saw that other aspect? I'm kind of curious for your take.
Well, I think that's a natural part of Dak's game. I do think that the injury, a few years back definitely impacted that. And I watched that guy just work relentless for years to come back from that, right? And it takes time. I mean, that was a significant injury. That is not just something that you quickly overcome. So, I mean, Dak is one of the most competitive dudes I've ever been around. He works so hard. And I think, things kind of came together this year that allowed him to be that version of himself to create. And he created a lot of plays. I thought he had an outstanding year. I know it ended in a tough way. It was really bitter taste in those guys' mouth to have the season that showed a lot of signs of promise end that way. But I'm seeing these clips right here. I mean, that to me is all of the things that Dak possesses. And to come back from that injury, it's a testament of Dak's work that he put in and also the team of people around him, the medical staff and the PT people that put time into helping him get back to that place. That's what he's capable of right there. All those things that we saw this year. I mean, there was a stretch of games where it looked like he was one of the favorites to be the MVP.
Right.
And so, it's great to see Dak back in that place. And as he gets working this offseason, I'm sure he's going to continue to just want to keep growing in all those areas that he can. And with what happened last year, there's probably that mindset to really just grind and get after it this year. And it should be a great offseason for him.
Now, I'm looking at about 45 seconds here, but you also work with Zach Wilson, whose career with the Jets looks like it's coming to an end. It seems like, the Jets, when you hear what they're saying, he's going to be gone from there. How does a young man who's been through everything he's been through get his confidence back, even to play as a backup? Like, how do you know him? How does he get it back to really feel like playing football is fun again?
Well, Zach's a gritty kid. And this experience that he had at the New York Jets, I know that he probably wishes it would have gone a little bit different. But just like anybody has to do in life, you just have to stay gritty. You got to push through. You got to stay persistent. And that's exactly what he's doing. And I think an opportunity to be able to continue to grow somewhere would be exactly what he needs. And I think he's excited for the offseason. Look, life sometimes just throws these major curveballs, man. And it would have been really cool to see things go great for Zach, for the coaches that were there. I mean, I had a chance to be in that building. There's a lot of good dudes in that building. It just didn't work. And sometimes that happens in the NFL. And it doesn't mean that the player's not talented or the coaches. I mean, it's just sometimes it doesn't work. And so I think an opportunity to kind of reset and use all that experience that he has. I mean, the kid's played in 30-something football games. And like I mentioned before, like he's a tough kid, and this situation that he's had to go through is just going to make him tougher. And then you just move on from there, and you stay positive, and you hope that he can land a place that's going to allow him to continue to grow.
Awesome stuff, John. We're going to talk to you for probably the duration of our entire show because I love what you guys do at 3D It's not like you just prepare guys for the draft. I mean, they keep coming back for a reason because you're doing such a good job keeping them playing at a high level and adding to where they're playing. This isn't just prepping them for the draft. This is keeping quarterbacks playing at a high level, and you guys do a brilliant job of it. So thank you so much for taking the time, John, to spend some time with Steve and I.
Oh, yeah, you guys are welcome. Thank you for the kind words, man. I love this job. I love working with these guys. And it's like you said, like when I get a chance to work with these young guys, these guys, J.J. McCarthy, Mike Penix, Jayden Daniels, these are guys we've been training for three plus years. So I love just trying to help these guys with not only this process, but, man, their career. And so thank you for noticing that. I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah. Oh, anytime, John. And we're going to welcome you back multiple times, hopefully.